out there and still deliver on the big iron?
Sure.
Actually, that raises a question I have is I know you guys started supporting Linux years ago. Um, in terms of the customer base, what do you guys see with Linux? I mean, I know we see a fair amount of server use of Linux. Do you see the same thing, or are the vast majority of your users still using Windows on both client and server?
If you ask me about paying users, um, they're
Yeah.
using it on servers. If you
Okay.
ask me about the number of people who are using VA Smalltalk, there's probably as many using it as clients as are using it for servers.
Okay.
But but it's it's people in 1 and 2 person development shops who are using it as a client. They're not. I don't think we have a lot of customers that I'm familiar with, at least, who are actually deploying on Linux clients.
So now the reins of the company are focused solely on Smalltalk. Are you going to make any aggressive moves with licensing, like make a completely, well, almost except for the VM, free open source version of VA Smalltalk that you can just pick up and use for whatever you want, uh, compared to the supported enterprise version?
So so that's an interesting question. We are more or less in the same position as Syncom is with VisualWorks. We have a free evaluation copy that you can essentially use forever. Um, it it has a nag screen, so it doesn't work very well as a deployment platform. But I don't know that we're going to go um, in licensing in any particular direction. We have a number of ways for people to get um, free copies. Essentially, we periodically put up development builds for download. Um, if you're an academic institution, we will provide you with free licenses for use in classes or in research. And if you're a contributor to open source projects, we will provide you with free paid up license. Um, Up until a month ago, you would have gotten a lot more than you do now, but because you would have gotten Smalltalk and Java. But now it's just Smalltalk that Instantiations can offer that way.
Huh. So, what direction will the libraries be going? Like I was trying to say earlier, you've got a very strong web services story. That's always been there, and it's kind of one of the hallmarks of VA Smalltalk. When I first started using VA Smalltalk, there were two things that really stood out amongst everything else, which was Toplink and the web services stack that you had. Um,
Hmm.
VisualWorks actually has very similar stuff now, but when I first got introduced to VS Smalltalk, you guys led the way. I think there was some sort of research project that created most of that stuff. But yeah, what strengths are you going to push now that you're expanding and focusing solely on Smalltalk?
Our directions are to try and really build on our European customer set for one thing. We've been quite strong in Europe, and we want to continue to support their needs, which means that we need to improve our internationalization support. Um, the second thing is that we continue to have clients who use Windows as a client platform and like it, and they're very interested in some improvements in our application building technology. Um, as you probably know, we have two different um, sort of application building technologies. The original VAST composition editor, which is a connection of parts, wiring diagram sort of system, and Window Builder Pro, which has been a long time instantiations product built on top of VA Smalltalk. And they provide sort of different paradigms for building a user interface and present different issues. We're getting some pretty strong customer feedback that they'd like to see those two technologies merged somehow.
Somehow.
Somehow, yes. And of course,
That's pretty radically different stuff there.
the devil's in the details. The the underlying technology is that the composition editor stores all its information as metadata, meta descriptions of the applications, whereas Window Builder stores it more traditionally as Smalltalk source code.
Yeah, actually, I always found that interesting with the composition editor stuff, how it saves the information as objects in the NV repository. So there was no real way to kind of browse that information except in the visual editor. And so if you ever broke it,
well, that is exactly the issue. That is exactly the thing that
I put my hand up. I broke it a lot.
yes, a lot of people have, and once it's broken, it's pretty hard to recover. So that's sort of the driving force there. We started down the path with Glorp, working with Neil Ross, and we intend to continue down that path for the foreseeable future, making improvements in our Glorp support. We've only just in our last release actually done our first drop of Glorp.
It's just amazing how much of Smalltalk stuff gets sucked into the Java world. I mean, here we're talking about the Java section of instantiations bought off into Google. The Java technology of Gemstone specifically bought into VMware. And now we're talking about Glorp being the replacement for TopLink, which, as we know, ended up at Sun, which I guess now means, or actually at Oracle. And now Java is at Oracle. And it's all just sort of getting sucked out. And I'm just so astonished that they would want to copy so much of what we have in Smalltalk without using Smalltalk.
Well, Smalltalk has always been seen, I think, as the birthplace of good technology, and it was for instantiations also. I mean, that's how instantiations got into doing its Java tools.
I actually had kind of a related question about Glorp, and I'm not Glorp specifically, but I find it interesting that the Smalltalks, even though there's no ANSI process, the Smalltalks are converging at sort of the higher level library level more than they ever were in the past. I mean, if you were to go back to the 90s when it was IBM and Park Place and Digitalk, there was virtually no convergence at all, ANSI process or otherwise. Now you have things like Seaside, which is basically the de facto Smalltalk standard web library. You have Glorp, which is now the de facto database integration library. And so even though there's no process, everything seems to be converging much more carefully than it ever did before. I mean, how are you guys coming along with Seaside? I know that you've released with Seaside 3. How hard? I know that was a fairly hard process. Could you go through that a little bit? Why that was so hard, and what had to be done?
Yeah. But I want to kind of address the why are things working better now?
Yeah.
Question first. Back in the days when I worked for IBM on Smalltalk, you cannot even begin to imagine what it took for me to get approval to go to the first Camp Smalltalk in San Diego and actually sit in the same room with Elliot and some of the other people from other companies. Oh my God, our competitors are going to be there. IBM lawyers were just crawling through my office.
Wow.
And that's the sort of attitude that kept things very formal and was not enabling for us to work together on things and made things like ANSI Smalltalk difficult. That's changed a bit, you know. Instantiations is a very open company, and I couldn't be happier that I left IBM and went to work for them. You know, I think that that this process or lack of process that you see is going to be the way of the future. That there will be more convergence de facto, not formally, but just de facto. Okay, now. Oh.
About just getting Seaside.
Yeah, I gave so much thought to that I lost track. Seaside. Okay, Seaside. Okay, first is you know, we've been working on Seaside for, I don't know, probably close to a couple years anyway. I had one of my other developers on it initially, and then I took it over. So we started on Seaside 2.8 doing ports, and the issues with continuations were very difficult at that point. You know, life has gotten much better as Seaside 3.0 was developed, and the entire sort of framework was refactored, and so the porting is much easier now. But you know, in retrospect, if I could think about what would have made things easier, I could say, gosh, if we were able to access code in Monticello directly instead of having to do file outs from Faro and file ins to VA Smalltalk, that would make it easier.
Can you do that now?
But we made a decision not to invest in doing that.
See, that's interesting, because I made the opposite decision.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the exact same situation as you, filing out from Squeak, filing into VisualWorks, fixing things up, and it was just so tedious. You know, it spent so much time, so I said, over a weekend, I said, maybe I can get this Monticello thing to work, because it's really just a zip file and then some binary format, and the binary format is a fairly well understood thing that's been in Squeak forever. And I did that, and I hooked it up, which maybe this is the real difference here, is I was able to hook it straight into Store and have Store do all the merging and all that kind of, and publishing and everything and all that stuff for me. And that's just been such a huge weight off. And then, of course, people immediately said, how do we publish back? And so I ended up doing the other side, where you could now publish back to Squeak source as well. And we were able to contribute bug fixes to the Seaside project as we were doing the porting for 2.9, which then became 3.0. So we made the opposite decision. Well, I made the opposite decision there, and I've never looked back.
Well, I think in retrospect, you made the right decision. And, you know, but as you know, as time has gone on here, it has continually been can we afford to take, you know, however much time out of the project to do that it would take, or should we just continue forward? Well, we're almost done, so let's just keep going. Well, almost done is stretched out to quite a long period of time.
Thankfully, Seaside 3.0 is almost done as well.
Yes. Yeah. So, you know, we instead worked with Lucas and Adrian Van Oss, and we developed a sort of a porting file out mechanism in Squeak and Faro. So we generate file outs from those systems in a format that of either full apps or deltas, in a format that VA Smalltalk likes. And now I can say, well,